Okay, welcome back. We're going to continue our deep dive into PMBOK 5, and this time it's Module 8. We're going to plan human resources and acquire our team. And keep in mind, again, that this is the next most natural thing for us to do in this sequential course. In real life, you may be addressing human resource issues way earlier than this, or perhaps coincidentally with you identifying your stakeholders and creating the project charter and all that. But we can't do that here. But the next best thing to do would be to address it in a sequence. So that's why we're going to do it this way. Let's define this and get a little wrapper around this. Human resource management is about processes, and everything is processes in PMBOK. Processes that organize, manage, and lead your team. You're going to organize your team, manage them, and then lead them to a successful project. Here's a graph that depicts these elements, and you need to be able to understand what these are, because you'll probably be quizzed on some aspect of these in the PMP exam. You need to know the difference between the project team itself, the project management team, which is a subset of that, as you can see from this graph down here, this depiction. Your project sponsor is a special entity, and then other stakeholders who could be, as we already know, could number in the hundreds, but they are all part of your project. So down here we see in the middle the project management team. That could be a number of people. It certainly includes the project manager, and it may only be the project manager on an appropriately sized project. So, and this is the core executive leadership team, you or a few selected people. The project team, the other people that are actually doing the work, building the stuff, doing the program, they're part of your extended project team, or your project staff, as you may call it too. The project sponsor over here is, of course, a very important person. He is your key stakeholder, and he interfaces directly with the project management team. And what this tries to depict is he is generally not encouraged to talk to the rest of your team, either behind your back or with you. You want all direction from your team needs to come from you, the project manager. So that's why it's depicted like this. And of course, other stakeholders, all the other people, may have a relationship with the project sponsor, so kind of overlaps. Certainly have a relationship with you because they're in your stakeholder register. And you see the little area right here. They may be able to influence, either knowingly or unknowingly, and hopefully knowingly, because you'll find this out with your stakeholder interviews, they may influence somehow the rest of your project team. So it's kind of a neat little graphic here. It's not in your PMBOK, but it depicts these concepts. But you need to know the difference between all these things, these terms. So how many processes are there in human resource management, and what are they? Here they are. There's 4. You plan your resource management, the how are you going to manage your resources. Then you go get your team, you develop your team, train them, whatever, and then you manage them, keep them on track, keep them working, you assess them, and all that kind of thing. So here's our knowledge area process group table, again with just knowledge area number 9 there, project human resource management. So where would plan human resource management fall? Okay, we all should know that by heart now. It falls under planning. All plans are under planning. How about acquire the team? Is that executing? Is that monitoring and controlling? Or is it a closing process? The same with develop. Where does it fall? Manage. Where does it fall? Well, we're acquiring. We're doing something. We're developing. We're actively executing something. We're managing the team. Okay, they're all executing processes. Okay, we don't monitor and control in this knowledge area. We execute our team, and we'll see why. So the first one here is creating our human resource management plan. Here's our inputs, tools, techniques, and outputs. And again, here's one activity where there's a single output, the plan. And what we do here, we identify project roles, responsibilities, the required skills that we need in the plan. Reporting relationships are noted in the plan, and staff acquisition and release schedule is in the plan, how we're going to manage it in the plan. And we have this thing called the staff management plan, which is a project management plan component. Like it says there, integral part. And we'll see what that is. Here's our data flow diagram. Again, let's look at this. Here's our main our process of focus right here, 9.1. Of course, the project management plan comes in. Now we have something different we haven't seen before. Activity resource, or estimate activity resources. This is part of 6, which is your time management knowledge area. Okay, which is your activity resources. You need to estimate these. Anyway, the resources that we need to do the work once we build our work breakdown structure, which again could be done concurrently with this in the real world. But what we need comes in here so we can help plan our resource management and do our staffing levels. That's what that's for. Certain OPAs and EEFs come in that we'll see, and that's it. So the main input other than the plan up here, which includes the staff management plan once it were created, the main input is the resource requirements to do all the detailed activities to build your deliverable. You need to know who those people are so you can manage them. So they come in, and the main output, of course, and single output, is the resource management plan, human resource management plan. And that goes directly into how you're going to acquire the team, once you have that list, how you're going to develop them and manage them. And by the way, it also goes out, now that you know the people, you need to know how much are they going to cost on this project. So it goes out to estimating your costs, and it goes out to identifying risks in the risk management knowledge area. Why would we send a human resource plan in to identify risks? There could be a number of reasons. One, you may have people that are highly skilled that you've got to have. That's a risk. What if they leave? They go on vacation. They change jobs. What if they get pulled by a more senior person in the organization that went over your head and pulled this guy out for their project? You never know. It's a risk. So you put that in risk. And the risk could be that you just don't have the skill levels in the organization. So it's risky. The people you were able to get may not be skilled enough. So that's a risk. So that's why it's tied to risk. So here's your inputs in a little more detail. Your management plan, information used to help prepare your human resource management plan. Again, life cycle. If it's a repetitive, phase-driven project, how long can you keep these people engaged on your project? You may have to take them off later. It's a problem. But you need to know that, so you need to know what life cycle you're using to help you identify these issues. You can tailor some processes like usual if you need to. Your change management plan, because as strange as it may seem, as we'll see, when you change your staff around, you bring people on, you take them off, PMBOK, as best practice, recommends that you issue a change request to do that. And it's not that the change control board necessarily would say, rejected that you're putting this guy on or off, although it could be possible if he's an important enough person. But generally, in change request, you have a continuous log repository of all changes to the project, no matter what it is. So that could be an instance where, remember those 5 change request types: corrective, preventative, defect, enhancement, and update. It could be an update, perhaps, that you're updating your plan because you're changing people around. But at least you have a record. So they do say you still do need to have a change request when you move people around from your project. Your configuration management plan, how to maintain your baselines would be in the plan, because people would help do that. Communication needs and how the work's executed. And here's really the main input, is your activity resource requirements. And that's from the time management knowledge area, chapter 6. Preliminary human resources and competencies, can come out of what you need, what people might be assigned to your work breakdown structure. And you, again, progressively elaborate this over time. But you need to know who is assigned to your work items, because they're part of your human resources, and you need to manage those with your staffing plan. Your environmental factors, of course, culture, your existing human resources. Human resources, people, are not an organizational process assets. People are an environmental factor. They learn how to do the job. You don't have control over the people directly necessarily, but they're part of the environmental factors. If they're geolocated, people all over the globe, you need to know that. That's an environmental factor, because culture here may be very different than the culture there, than the communication needs and everything else, so that's a big deal. Personnel administration policies, you need to follow them in your organization, so that may have an impact on how you acquire your staff. Of course, marketplace conditions, maybe you need to go out and augment your staff with expert judgment people or subject matter experts. What's in the marketplace that they can do that for you, so those are all considerations. Your organizational assets, of course, policies, role descriptions. You have your job descriptions. You're going to need those so you don't get into problems with the union, for example, if you have one. You say, oh, that's not my job. I'm not going to do that on that project. Well, you've got to have your roles and descriptions so that you're good with what you're doing. Of course, you may have organizational chart templates that's available to you from your organization that makes it easier to fill out your staff. Position descriptions of what you need to match those up with role descriptions so you don't get conflict with that with people. Org structure lessons learned. There may be better ways of doing an org chart than others for your particular project. So you need to look at past projects. What did they do? Can that help you look at those things? And issues escalation procedures. Certainly you're going to have issues like anybody else with human resources. So how do you handle those if you're not able to resolve them yourself with your escalation procedures? So these are all inputs to creating your plan. In a minute we're going to talk about the tools and techniques that are available to you as best practice by PMBOK to actually create your plan. Okay, let's talk about the tools and techniques that PMI recommends we use to create our staffing plan and human resource management plan. This is kind of an interesting subject matter right here, as we'll see. First, obviously, there's org charts and position descriptions. Different kinds that we could use that would be best suited for our particular project environment. There's hierarchical charts, matrix charts, and just plain old text charts. Here is an organizational chart, the hierarchical over here on the left, typical, org chart. Traditional presentation. This could be an organizational breakdown structure, also called a resource breakdown structure, depending on the focus of what it is you need. You could have both on your project if you want to depict them in different ways. Okay, and after the hierarchical chart, we have the responsibility chart, which is matrix, and a different way of looking at that is what's called the RACI chart, which is responsibility, accountability, consultant, informed chart. So up here, you can see strictly a matrix, responsibility, here's your people, here's what they're responsible for, however you want to do that. And the RACI chart's a special one down here. It's by activity. What is the activity? Like create the chart, collect the requirements, submit a change request. And here's your people, and how are they involved with that activity? So are they, here Ann says Ann is A, she's accountable for creating the charter. Ben is responsible, he does it, but Ann is accountable for what he does. Carlos is simply informed about the charter. And down here under develop a test plan, Ben, you consult him as an expert judgment person, subject matter expert, to help you develop the test plan, while Ann is accountable for getting it done, and Carlos may be in the testing unit, so he needs to be informed about it. So the RACI chart is really good. You should do these things, this kind of chart, so you know exactly who's supposed to do what and how they are involved, so you don't get conflicts. So I'm supposed to do that, and why didn't you tell me about that, and et cetera, et cetera. And when you didn't do this right, well, I'm not accountable for it. Well, you need to document that. That's the value of the RACI chart. Much better than the RAM chart, which tends to be less concise about those things. And then you have your role description, which is a text, which I'm sure we've all seen job descriptions in an organization. That's what we're talking about here. Who it is, what your responsibilities, what authority do you have, and et cetera. So all these kind of things are called text-based charts. Here's networking. Now we're planning for our human resource management plan. We're planning how we're going to handle our human resources. Networking, you can have formal, informal interactions with people, networking, right? It helps you understand the political, interpersonal staffing issues that may be out there. Know as much as you can about the people that you want on your staff, on your team. You need to know, but you can't just go get them because, oh, he has experience in this and this and that. What if you have multiple people? Which ones would you pick? Well, there's a lot of variables there. Are they available? Do they cost too much for you? And what are their skill levels, even though they can do it? And one may be better than the other but cost more, but he's not available, or whatever. You need to know this. You do that by networking, finding out, and then you can make a best decision on actually who you want on your team. And because you get access to a wider array of competencies and experience when you go out there and you actually find out things about people you don't really know perhaps, or not that familiar with, you can leverage. You can go to lunch with people, you can go to conferences, maybe you need external contractors to come in. You go to some conferences, come events, you talk around who has the skills you need. If it's a special skill, you'd want to do these kind of things, go outside of your company perhaps, and find these people. That's all networking. Talking to people, getting them to help you, help yourself. Then we have this, organizational theory. It's a behavioral science. We're talking about human resources, behaviors, right? And it's what people know and what they've learned. And again, human resources is an environmental factor. It's a learned thing, things you don't have any control over. It can be hard for you to control my behavior or anybody else's. So people, teams, units, they all have behaviors. Using organizational theory properly, which we're not going to go into a lot of detail at all here, but you need to know that organizational theory is a tool and technique you can use to best select your staff and manage them. It can help you shorten the time, reduce the cost, and the effort that you need to create your plan, so you can do it right the first time and make the best effort first. And of course, like anything else, progressive elaboration, your team can morph over time, so things change, but at least you'll have a good baseline because you'll know more than the normal PM who just says, give me Bob and Sue because they're available. It may not be the best choice for you. And, of course, expert judgment has to do with networking also, things like that. You help people for primary skills assessment. Boy, we got this project, we got to build this thing, we got these special things to do. What kind of real skills do we need for this? Do we need a 5-year Oracle DBA? Or do we need somebody who just knows SQL or easily or a lot of experience, whatever, What skills do you really need? You may need to have people help you. Say, well, we know about this. You really need this guy because he will do this for you better than so-and-so. And you need to consider that. What actual roles do you need in your project? What is it? How many people do you really need to get the job done? What roles are they going to fill? What's their preliminary effort level and number of resources? Right off the bat, you're going to need to staff with somebody. And then, of course, that'll morph and change over time. But initially, reporting relationships, will this fellow, I need him here on my staff to do this job, can he report directly to me and I can have direct control over him? Or, Do I have to, remember functional project organization, do I have to go spend $18 a day and buy his manager lunch all the time so that I can use this fella? Whatever it is, what are the reporting relationships? Staffing lead time, how long before I can get this fella? Because he's already assigned to somewhere else. Can I wait that long, or do I have to take a lesser resource that I need now? Staff acquisition, retention, and release plans. You always have to have an exit plan. How and when are you going to, how long are you going to keep staff, and when are you going to release them? You need to know that in advance so that their managers, if they're not from your direct group, so their managers and other project managers who may want these people, so they know when they can plan for these people to be available to you, or to them. And government and certainly union contract compliance has great bearing if you're in that situation on who and when you get and what their job would be, what their role would be. Unions can have a great significant impact on your selection of people. And of course you're going to hold meetings to work all this stuff out, gain HR plan consensus in the end. That says, here's my plan, I want to do all this. You need HR, and perhaps even the union has to be on board with you so you can proceed in the way you think is best for your project. So the output, again, one single output of this process is the actual human resource management plan, how you're going to do all this stuff. Your roles and responsibilities, project charts, all that other stuff is your plan. Now, many of the other question mark management plans, which would be time management, cost management, procurement management, whatever your other knowledge area management plans are, subsidiary plans of your project management plan come into bear too. In particular, you're going to do things like your staffing management plan, a key one for this, which is a project management plan component. Okay, staff acquisition, how you're going to do it, their resource calendars. We're going to start hearing more about resource calendars now, and they come out of your staffing, HR, or they come out of procurement. Well, why? I don't want to get off track, but why do you have resources planned out of procurement? Well, because people that are building stuff for you have resources, and you need to know that they can continue to provide you with that external deliverable or service. So you need to know their resource calendars too. And we'll see that under procurement. Staff release plan, you got to have that. That's part of your staffing management plan. Their training needs, we're going to get into that in a couple other, shortly, in a few other processes under here. Recognition and rewards is certainly important that you have this available to your staff so they know why they're doing some things and how they can be recognized for good work. So you always have to have recognition and rewards to some extent to keep your people motivated and intent on what they're doing. Compliance, safety, all those features of human resources are in your staff management plan, and it could be actually formal is best, but it could be informal if your project is that type where you can get by with more or less a kind of an informal plan, but formal is always best. So that's your HR management plan. Now here is a staffing level kind of a graph here. Over time, you got your staff hours for senior designers, it says on the left over here. So for your senior designers, this is your the hours you need over this period of time for them. So for all your roles and all your people, and based on their resource calendars and so on, you need to have graphs like this to help you plan for these people for the duration of your project. Yeah, here's one where you don't need somebody for 2 weeks, this particular senior designer. So what's he going to do for these 2 weeks? You need to talk to his manager to see what this person, how he can be productive during this time when you don't need him in your schedule. So that's it for 9.1, developing the plan and how we're going to acquire manage the acquiring of our team. And now we're going to actually go out and get the people, and we're going to do that in a minute. Okay, now that we've created our HR management plan, we're going to actually go out and acquire the team. So here is our human resource management overview of the knowledge area. Circled is 9.2, so we're going to get into that right now. So here's our ETO diagram. Primarily, what are we doing? We're going to confirm our human resource availability, and then we're going to obtain the team in order to complete our project activities. And we're going to document this, where do you think? We're going to document all this in our project staffing assignments and in our project resource calendars, where this stuff goes. Here's our data flow diagram for 9.2. The main input is the resource management plan, where we have our staffing levels plan, how we're going to manage all this stuff, and the skills we need. Our job descriptions are in there as far as we can get at this point, since we're still early in the game. What's our, like a RACI chart, who's responsible, who needs to be informed, who's accountable, who do we consult, that kind of thing. It's all in the management plan. So now, armed with that, we're going to go out and get the people. And where do the people come from, looking at this diagram? Okay, they come from organizational process assets, right? No. They come from the enterprise environmental factors. That's where the human resources are. So we're pulling them in over here, along with maybe organizational personal policies and things like that. So when we're done, the main output of this is the project staff assignments, the actual people and their assignments for the project. And those assignments then go down to 9.4 so we can manage the team, but just prior to that they go into 9.3. First we develop the team and then we manage them. It's kind of odd how they have these backwards in the manual, but it's probably because over here the resource calendars also go in there, and now they're also resource calendars go out to these other processes so that we can estimate the activity resources better and update that plan and those documents. The durations now, we need to update those based on the resource calendars, and we can develop finally down the line our actual schedule to get the work done. And of course determining the budget is critical, and it's based on the cost rate of the human resources that we're acquiring. I circled enterprise and organization over here just to reinforce the fact that that is where the people come from. Human resource plan, big one. Develop the plan. Progressive elaboration, keep those updated, keep our stakeholder management plan updated, the HR plan updated, and all the other subsidiary plans as appropriate. So here we are, acquire the team. HR plan, let's look at this. Effectively negotiate and influence others who provide the required human resources. You need to work with these people to get what you need. You can't just go ask HR, ask a functional manager for their people, ask PMO for their people. You need to negotiate, influence others so that they can help accommodate you in the best way possible. Insufficient human resources, and this should be no surprise, but insufficient human resources or skill capabilities decrease the probability of success. And in the worst case, they could cause your project cancellation because you just can't get it done with the people and the skills that you have at hand. It's possible. So be sure to reflect the impact of any unavailability of required resources at that point in time in your schedule, budget, risks, certainly quality. Your quality may go down if you don't get the right people with the right skills, and of course your training plans would be impacted. So just a caveat there that this is a very critical, significant process here to acquire your team, what you need to be successful. So HR management plan, basically it's the how-to you're going to do these things. Your environmental factors, people. Human resource info, the availability of them, their competency, their experience, how interested they are in the project. You know, you might be at odds with somebody as far as assigning them because you need the resource, but they have nothing, they're not interested in this project at all, doesn't do anything for them, they're going to be unproductive, they're going to be troublesome perhaps. You need to keep these things under consideration and maybe select an alternate resource which will maybe impact your project a little negatively, but it's better than having somebody who just doesn't want to be there. And of course their cost rate may be a significant factor in what you select based on your allocated budget that you have to work with over time. Personnel administration policies, you know, how you're going to go get these people. They may have rules and guidelines of an actual, you know, approach you take, the path you take to get people. Your structure, organizational structure, could have a bearing. Whether you're co-located, of course, in multiple locations has a significant bearing on how the efficiency and effectiveness of how you can manage the project if people are like all over the place. Your organizational assets, that's basically, again, standard stuff, policies, standards, procedures that apply to human resource acquisition would come to bear. You need to reference those. Now that you have inputs, in particular your EEFs, that's where your people are. Now you need to think about these things here, about pre-assignment and negotiating and then actually acquiring them. Virtual teams we'll talk about, and other criteria analysis too. So let's look at pre-assignment. Competitive proposal features, as you're going out and trying to get this project going, or you may have a procurement that already has people assigned to a function that you need on your project in a competitive basis. People may be pre-assigned, earmarked for your project, waiting for it to happen. Now you can't wait forever, or they may get called away by somebody else, but that's a possibility, pre-assignment, because they have specialized skills, and they're already in the charter saying I need this kind of skill and here's the person, and you're really hoping that'll happen in a timely manner. You may need to negotiate with, again, functional managers. If you need a subject matter expert, a very skilled person on their staff, And when they're dedicated to doing their functional manager department job, you may want to slice their time or take them 100% on your project. You need to negotiate with the functional manager to get the resources you need, if you can do that. Other project management teams, you may have resources there that you need, so you need to negotiate them and perhaps accelerate their release of people if it's to your benefit. So negotiation is a big thing, and certainly with external stuff, if you need, vendors, suppliers, subcontractors, negotiate with your company, with HR and with them to try and get, what you get your proposals out there so you can select the people you need. Ability to influence others is key to negotiating staff assignments. So this whole thing really is about, negotiation to get what you need, which is a key skill that a PM needs. So acquisition, you need to acquire externally when you can't get them internally. Basically, that's what this acquisition means. Virtual teams. The advantages, of course, less travel. You don't have to go there. They don't have to come here. You do it virtually over some approved, project-approved conferencing or communication medium. They may have special expertise way out there, and they can't afford to come here. Maybe they're slicing their time over there for you, so you do that virtually. Or they may even work from home if that's appropriate. So whatever it is, virtual teams have certain advantages. Of course, if they work from home, again, you don't have the cost of overhead of supporting them in the office. Disadvantages are because you're not face-to-face, co-located, you can have a lot of misunderstandings in your instructions, what they're supposed to do, how they're supposed to do things, their tools. So that's a disadvantage of virtual. Language, if in fact language is a barrier, you need to deal with that. Technology costs, because they're virtual, may be more expensive than traveling there if you need that kind of communication on the other end to support a virtual team. And of course, a disadvantage for that person who's virtual is just plain isolation. They're there away from the team, so their motivation certainly may suffer. And that's all things that you need to deal with virtual teams. Multi-criteria decision analysis. Weighted selection criteria. Now, if you have a lot of candidates, a lot of people that could fit the bill, you're going to want to select them with some rationale. So you do a weighted selection. If you've ever heard of Kepner-Trego, it is a weighted decision-making tool. You might want to look that up. It's not in the PMBOK, but it is a good decision analysis tool that you could use. But basically, you can weight, their availability, their cost, their availability. If that's critical, you'd rate it, give it a high rate, say a 10 or 100, whatever your scale is. Cost, cost is not a problem. Your company's flush with money. I don't care what it costs, get somebody in. So cost, that weight would be lower. Experience, similarly, their ability, their knowledge, skills, attitude, maybe international factors. You need to weight all those, put all the people in, assign them weights, calculate it out. Whoever floats to the top would be the person you would want to select. And you'd start there to see if you can get them, work your way down. At least you have a rationale for picking one over the other at that point. And by the way, if you do these kind of tools, especially like a Kepner-Trego, which is basically what this is saying, you have to, at the beginning, before you put the people's attributes in there, as far as scoring them, you set your weights, and you say, do we all agree, consensus, this management team, that these are the weights for these things we want to use? And they say yes. And if that happens, then the rule is, no matter what the outcome, once you put the actual people in there and you get a score and you rank them, you cannot change it. You can say, well, that's nice, this guy's at the top, but I really want this guy. No. If you've agreed to do it this way, you need to stick with the plan. You can't be arbitrarily changing the weightings just so you get the outcome that you want or somebody else wants. So just be careful when you do these, that you have complete consensus with using that kind of tool. So those are the tools you can use to select your team. And in the end, hopefully you'll end up with your project staff assignments. So it's staffed when? And here's a quote from the PMBOK. When appropriate people have been assigned to the team, then your project is staffed. A little vague there, but it means that, progressive elaboration, eventually you'll say, I'm fully staffed. But project is staffed when the appropriate people have been assigned. Staffing documentation, you will produce a project team directory, so we know exactly who's on your team, no doubt about it. Here's the list of team members as of this date. It's a project document. And your project org charts, then you can fill that out based on your team directory. Good to have. Then your resource calendars for all these people. Each project team member needs to have in the resource calendar their availability, their schedule constraints, what time zones they're in. That'll make a big difference. Of course, vacation time when they're not going to be working on your project. Local holidays, and if it's a virtual team, you may have different holidays. Europe especially has, from our point of view, they have some really strange holidays where they just go for a week. So you need to know all these things so you can properly schedule your work. And there may be other project commitments that they have that are on this calendar. You might recall the staffing level graph we saw a little bit ago. where we had this, it was a senior designer, I think we had a break for 2 weeks, or he had nothing to do. Well, the flip side of that is some other manager will see that, there's this, side of this now, and he can use this person during that period, unless that's a vacation. That could also be a vacation slot where the person's gone. So whatever that may be. And then you update your PM plan, primarily your HR management plan. Change the prior resource assignments. You can change your resource assignments, change roles, you can tweak your responsibilities. If you see, well, I'm just not getting who I want, let's change this so I get somebody where it fits better. So your HR plan may change. So that's acquiring the team. Gone out, done our due diligence, maybe did some weightings. We can find out, of multiple candidates who's the best fit, and you go after them. And once you get them, you do your resource calendar, your staffing assignments, your team directory, and now you're ready to rock and roll on the project, basically. Although you're going to continually update it, progressive elaboration throughout the project, because you never know what may happen to your staff, personally or in the business. So that's it for acquiring and your project team and building your human resource plan. When we come back, we're going to talk about Module 9, which is now that we have the team, we're going to develop them, train them, do all the good stuff that you need so they're very productive and knowledgeable on your project. And then we're going to manage them, make sure they're doing their job right and do performance assessments on them continuously as needed. So we'll see you back for Module 9.